Now, the bandwagon, as they say, was getting heavy. Everyone started to jump on the bandwagon again.
Portland is not in a position to try to come back, and he should just kind of leave that alone.
Stop being satisfied with mediocre performances.
I don't like it. Plain and simple, I really don't like it. An all-star game just shows how much they just kind of continue to placate the players and their lackadaisical efforts on the court.
It really sparked my interest, and I'm sure that of many others. Alister, Albert, thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to Baseline with Alister and Orain. I am, of course, your host, Alister Albert, and I think you would notice we have a different person here on screen. It's not Orain. Orain is having some technical difficulties at the moment. He will join in as soon as he's able to, but we have an absolute legend to join us here on our 10th episode. Not many podcasts get to episode 10, but we have a very special guest here for you, Peter Vecsey, NBA, columnist, reporter, presenter, Hall of Fame legend with me here for this episode. I'm really proud to have him. Peter, just say hello to the people. Really happy to have you on here.
Glad to be here. You know, my mom was born in Liverpool.
I know that.
Okay.
We'll probably touch that.
One of these days, you're going to fly me over in your jet so I can come to England for the first
Let me tell you something, Peter. This is long overdue. We did our interview in 2019, and you should have been here already. We should have been at a pub and had a drink or a long time by now. So really happy to have you on. And for our Caribbean audience, of course, if any one of you, and if I'm assuming here, and I'm doing the wrong thing, we have a very big Caribbean basketball fandom. The guys follow the NBA, very ardent fans from the 80s, 70s, and everything from before. But of course, I'm catering to a slightly younger crowd, but it doesn't matter. But for those who don't know who Peter Vecsey is, I'm going to give you just a really quick intro into some of the things that he's done. Enviable experience and CV, but I'll just run through it really quickly. Columnist for the Daily News. You started there really early, didn't you? I dropped out of college, 19 years old, started out at 19 years old, but you've been there for 14 years as one of the lead columnists. You were the main guy for the Hoop du Jour, a column that ran from 1977. I was really surprised to see that, to 2012. You were at the USA Today for...
hold on, let me tell you. So that was at the New York Post.
That was at the New York Post, right? Okay.
Right.
The Hoop du Jour.
Hoop du Jour was the Post.
Okay. All right. USA Today, you were there for 3 years. Of course, most people, and how I got to know about you. I'm a kid from the 80s, grew up in the 90s. I knew you from NBC. You mentioned here for me, you're one of three of anchors to have been on TV for all 12 years of that initial run with Bob Costas and Marv Albert. You were on TNT for 4.5 years, NBA TV for 8 years thereabouts, and you're here with me right now. This is not a drop off. This is an elevation. You've done quite a few things in your career. Broke loads of different stories. But I'm really thrilled to have you here with us to talk some hoops and just kind of go through it basically. So Pete, I kind of gave people a little bit of a preamble of to what you have done in your career, but what I really want to start off with, how does one become an NBA insider? You kind of broke the mold in terms of breaking news, getting all the scoops and publishing them in your articles and columns as you did. How did you get into this field? How did you become the man, breaking news as you did in the early 70s and 80s?
Yeah, well, it was not easy because I received a lot of resistance from my bosses.
Right.
They what is this guy saying? He knows this and he hears that, and he's got sources wherever. Because I was just building sources then. I was a young guy.
Right.
Like you mentioned, I dropped out of college, but I started in high school. I started working at the Daily News as a junior in high school, working the entire baseball season, doing statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd work 5 days a week while going to high school as a junior and a senior.
What?
And then you probably don't know this, but I went around the world on a ship. I joined the Merchant Marine out of high school.
Yes,
I was not planning to go to college, and went around the world for 4.5 months on a ship as a scullion. Do you know what a scullion is?
I do not. Tell me.
Yeah, so it's somebody who washes dishes in pots and pans. That was me.
Wow.
That's, I mean, yeah,
Humble beginnings. Humble
no,
beginnings.
absolutely, absolutely. But it made me appreciate where I wound up because I really worked hard, and even the beginning of that trip around the world, I was seasick for 2 weeks from
Wow.
New York, from New Jersey to San Francisco, going through the Panama Canal.
Wow.
I was sick and seriously thought about jumping overboard. I was that sick, and they had no compassion. I was the youngest guy on the ship by far, and they had no compassion for what I was going through. They said, "Jump, go ahead, jump." But
Wow.
if you're not going to jump, get back to work.
There wasn't an HR department there for sure, was there?
Hardly.
Wow.
So anyway, so then I went to college for 6 months, and
Yeah.
I played basketball there. I made the team, and then I was offered a full-time job at the Daily News while I was a freshman in college, and I quit school after 6 months. And everybody said big mistake. Well, guess what? It was not a big mistake.
Worked out.
And was in the newspaper business from 1962 or 3 until 2012. I've been retired since 2012, which
2012. Okay, I wanted to ask that when you officially stopped. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've accomplished nothing actually since then, but
Right.
you're
living off your legend status. That's fine, man. You've done your time.
Thank God I built up a few pensions over those years, so I don't have to worry about that. But and then in 1977, the New York Post offered me a job. Rupert Murdoch had just bought the paper in '76, and I was one of the first hires of the paper. I was the second guy hired in sports, and the sports editor's name was Jerry Lisker, who I owe my whole career to for real. He offered me an NBA column, and there was no such thing before that. There was no such thing as anybody covering one sport.
Wow.
My father and older brother were sports writers, and they told me, big mistake. You've got to cover everything.
Right.
At the Daily News, I did cover everything. They made me do everything. But at the Post, I took the job and was the first person, maybe the guy in the Boston Globe, Peter Gammons, who was doing baseball, he might have beaten me by a few months. I'm not sure about that.
Right.
But other than us two, nobody was doing one sport specifically. And as it turned out, you asked me how it happened that I became an authority. Well, I was dedicated my whole being to breaking stories. That's what I wanted to do. And I mentioned before that my editors at the Daily News, one guy, he was the assistant sports editor. He even charted stuff that I wrote about to check my accuracy.
Wow.
Like he really had no faith in me. It was no confidence, and so that pissed me off big time. And I broke some huge stories for the Daily News. One of them in particular, which they put on the front page of the newspaper and the back page and the inside, was Julius Erving being sold from the Nets to Philadelphia. That was my story.
Right.
And so that was the biggest one that I broke at the Daily News. But when I went to the Post, I broke innumerable huge stories, and and then just built it up over the years. And I got to say one other thing. I was able to cover the ABA when I was at the Daily News because nobody really wanted to touch the ABA. Everybody wanted to be a baseball writer at the Daily News in those days, or cover the Knicks. Right. And so I took the ABA assignment, did a lot of stuff on my own time, and then also started a team in the famous Rucker tournament up in Harlem
Yep.
in 1971. And they allowed me to bring a team in there. I brought a bunch of nets, and I brought a guy named Julius Irving with me he was getting out of Massachusetts at that time, going into the ABA. We came into the Rucker tournament together. And because of my affiliation with the ABA and then the Rucker, I was able to gain a lot of sources who trusted me, because here's this white guy spending weekends up in Harlem 4 straight summers.
Right.
And, we won a couple championships. And then I came back in the early 80s and won a couple more championships with a whole different team. And anyway, I owe everything, all my accomplishments that I've done in the sport of pro basketball to what happened during those years in Harlem and the ABA.
Right, that's awesome. And it's a shame Orion isn't on at the moment, because that was one of the stories he wanted to ask you about. When we think about breaking news and being able to deliver something that people are just not aware of, and you're doing a lot of that background work to get the information, get your sources right, to make sure that everything is clarified and you're all right to go with that story. The Dr. J news was a big one, coming closer into, I suppose, modern times. You broke the story about Latrell Sprewell coming over to the Knicks. You did LeBron.
No. Back up.
Okay.
I broke the story about him choking his coach.
Oh, it was about the coach. Okay, not
that, and then not the Knicks. The next day, I really didn't break that story. I mean, I think everybody had it. I endorsed him coming to the Knicks, but
the Knicks. That's what I got.
The big one was choking his coach, and so I had that before anybody, days before anybody, even could get any information. I had it all.
Yeah.
And another big one was the guns in the locker room with the bullets. Arenas and the Critton and many others. Barkley being traded from Philly to Phoenix.
LeBron
the coach
to LA.
Who's that?
LeBron to LA.
Yes, LeBron to LA was actually after I retired. I was writing a story online, writing a column online that I did for maybe a year. Maybe the last time I spoke to you was at that time in 2019. Right. And I did write, I guaranteed that LeBron would join the Lakers almost a year before it happened.
Yes, you did. You did.
Guaranteed it. And so, yeah, everybody. I'm glad you brought that up, because nobody today brings that one up at all. But I wasn't with a newspaper then. But it got pretty good coverage. Yeah.
Yeah. So you built a Hall of Fame career, on being able to do that. Plus, of course, the relationships that you built with players, executives, and everything to allow you to publish the articles that you did. Also, of course, sprinkled in with your personality and the one-liners and the names and everything that came along with that. So people do remember you for that. And, it's one of and that's why I say it's a great pleasure to have you on, because when I started really following the NBA in the 90s, but really starting to really study the game, really reading articles and trying to understand what was going on, it was your articles, the Hoop du Jour, and then there was Adrian Wojnarowski and Dan Devine, some of the guys at Yahoo at the time. I was following that those columns quite a bit, and you were always one who stuck out to me, and of course your time on NBC, seeing you on screen and everything. So it's
let me interrupt. Another big story that I broke when I was at USA Today.
Yes,
was the death of Drazen Petrovic. We had that on the front cover of USA Today.
Right.
And so I broke that story that he died in a car accident on the Autobahn. And then a few weeks later, I wanted to write about his funeral that was taking part, in Croatia, that was happening in Croatia, and it coincided with the opening of the NBA Finals.
All right.
So I wrote a column about Drazen. And our relationship, we had a pretty tight relationship. In fact, I was in Portland's locker room the night that he found out he was traded to the Nets. I was there, actually. Not that I broke the story, but I had a great story for being there, because he's crying in the locker room, and the only one who stayed with him throughout throughout until he was ready to leave was Clyde Drexler,
Right.
and telling him that this is the best thing that ever happened to him, and blah blah blah. Anyway, so I wrote the column for USA Today, and the editor, we all had our own editors. It wasn't the sports editor, but it was an editor.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm not printing this. You've got to write a column on the opening of the finals. And I said, wait, our newspaper was the one who broke the story that he died.
Right.
This guy's like the most important European that's playing in the
Time.
NBA.
Yes.
And you're telling me that I can't. I said, well, I'm not writing I'm not writing about the finals. I said, you either print it or you don't print it. That's your prerogative.
Right.
But at the end of the playoffs, I went to the top editor of USA Today and asked that my contract be voided. I had 2 more years left on my contract.
Wow.
And I asked to leave, and he allowed me to leave. He didn't have to, but he did. And that's when I went back to the Post.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that story.
So is that just out of a feeling, undermined and not wanting to take the story on? That's why you decided to make that move?
Yeah, I mean, I felt I owed it to Drazen to write about his funeral. I wound up writing that column, expanding on that column when I went back to the Post, and the Nets retired his number.
Yeah.
And his parents came in, his brother came in for it. And so I wrote everything I'm telling you and more about our relationship. And so I'm very proud of that column. Awesome. And interestingly enough is that only a few Nets showed up for his funeral.
Really?
Yes, only a few. I'm going to try to get it right. Chris Dudley, who played with him, he went. Believe it or not, Chris Morris,
right,
who was a bit of a renegade, when he played in the NBA. He very unexpected that he would show up. And the only other one to show up was Willis Reed, who was the general manager of the Nets.
Wow.
Okay. And so I would have loved to have been there for that. Not that I could have gone, but I would have. I to this day, I've checked on it. His mom is still alive. His brother's still alive.
Right.
I don't think they live in the same place anymore. But if I come to Europe, I am absolutely going to go find them.
Yeah, that'd be really good. That's a name for sure. It was one of those what ifs. We see him torch Jordan and do so much to the league at that time. One of the most respected shooters and just all round guards in the league at that time. So yeah, I didn't know you had kind of written that column, and that kind of precipitated you moving on from the the Post at that time. So yeah, thanks for that story. So just talking about breaking stories and everything. So that's what you do. That you're the man for that. So what I wanted to move into there, basically from that conversation about breaking stories, is a recent story that has come out, but it's kind of been festering for quite some time. This little icy relationship between Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan. He came out recently. He was on a podcast, I think was with DeMarcus Cousins, Chandler Parsons, Michelle Beadle, and he was talking about, players not really respecting the era that they're in. Why are they propping up Michael Jordan as the best? He's the guy who just gave us some warm-ups and some track bottoms.
That's what I don't understand about your era, right? You guys are playing with arguably the greatest player to ever play. And excuse me when I say this, but y'all treat him like he ain't nothing. And I'm talking
wow.
Right? Y'all act like, y'all instead of pubbing y'all era up, y'all go back and say our era was the greatest. Oh, Michael Jordan was the greatest. Nobody could ever be greater than Michael Jordan, right? Okay. And then you turn around, but in your era, LeBron James sitting there, he holding every single basketball record. I mean, every single one of them. And you're looking at a Kevin Durant and you're looking at a Steph Curry. But then when y'all say who the greatest, y'all talk about the guy that gave you some shoes and, gave you some warm-ups.
Fair.
And I just kind of course, we know what the whole history of that is, the freeze outs, not being made, not making the Olympic team, the dream team, and everything. But are you surprised that this has gone on for so long? You covered the league during that time. Are you surprised to see this sort of relationship being played out in the media as it has, mainly through Isiah? But just what have you noticed about this, and what's your thoughts?
Well, I think you remember Isiah and I worked together at NBC
At NBC, yeah.
for a number of years. So we hung out together for a number of years. So I know a lot of these stories,
Right.
from the inside out, stuff that he would complain about or have a right to be angry about. I totally agree that he should have been on that dream team. He definitely warranted it. He had won 2 championships. John Stockton still hasn't won a championship to this day. And he was put on the team.
Yeah.
But it's come to light again because I think it would have been dropped. The jealousy is absolutely there. Isiah absolutely jealous of the of all the accolades that Jordan has gotten over the years. Especially it happened in his city of Chicago, where he's from. But I think he would have let it drop had Michael not gone after him in his documentary.
Last Dance, yep.
Yeah, The Last Dance. So, he called him an asshole in it. And, look, I know what Michael thinks about, well, everybody knows what he thinks about Isiah. He wouldn't allow stuff that Isiah had said in another I can't remember what it was, but Jordan did something else where Isiah was interviewed for before he retired, I believe.
Right.
And he didn't use any of it. Michael didn't permit any of it to be used, and he told the guy who was in charge of it. He said, I'm not going to years from now, I'm not going to wake up and hear him say, these nice things about me, in my movie, in my document, whatever it was. He says, when I know he doesn't mean any of it, and we know we hate each other, so so he took it out. But anyway, going back to The Last Dance, Isiah was furious because he did interview for that, and they didn't use it.
They did, right?
Oh, so he felt that he was really used, and then used and then abused. So that reawakened, all the hostility that existed between these two guys, and and Isiah just can't put it away. He just can't do it. Now let me just clarify something. And Isiah, and I did an interview with Isiah. Oh man, it was for the NBA retired players, and it was one of the last ones that I did. I did it in Springfield. We were both at the Hall of Fame I forget who was going in, but I did it with him. Yep. And I've discussed a lot of this stuff I'm going to say to you. And I said to him at the time, I said, Isiah, we can talk about all this stuff now, and I can tell, I'll tell you the truth about what went on. It's the truth. And nobody is ever going to pick up on it. They're just not going to. They're going to ignore it. And that's exactly what's happened. So here we are back again. But, the word that Michael Jordan had anything to do with Isiah not making the dream team is total bullshit.
Right. Okay. A lot of people say, he had that influence, but not the case.
They'll say it until they die. They don't know. They'll just well, he didn't make it, so Jordan wouldn't have been on the team if he had been on it. I said that's bullshit. Right. He would have been on the team. It was worth so much to him in endorsements, and getting known even more so worldly. Rod Thorne was the general manager who drafted Michael Jordan with the Bulls.
Yep.
So he was really tight with Michael, and he was the guy that was responsible for getting Michael's approval to be on the team. Now I have this on tape. I interviewed Thorne when he retired from the league office, and we discussed this at length. And he said not once did Michael ever say that he would not be on this team because of because of Isiah.
Right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that they had a committee that voted on who would be on this team.
Mm-hmm.
The committee had like 9 or 10. I can't name all of them. Thorne was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie Walsh was another one.
Right.
And Jack McCloskey was another one, who was the Pistons general manager. They were 3 of them on there. I could name more, but anyway, that's enough for now. But I've talked to all those people. Now Jack has been dead quite a while. Jack actually quit the committee when Isiah was not on the team. He quit the committee in protest.
Wow.
The last vote for the last player on the team was between Isiah and Drexler.
Right. Okay.
The vote went to Drexler.
Right.
So I asked Donnie Walsh. I said, Donnie, was anything said before the last vote? Did anybody say anything that you don't know? Don't vote for Isiah. Don't. He said, absolutely not. Nobody ever said anything to the committee about who would be on this team. So there were so many factors involved that negate the thinking that people have and will continue to have. They're not going to see this what I'm saying here to you and say, oh, okay, so that's the story. No. They're going to keep believing what
they want to. The narrative has been out there for so long, and that's kind of been the fanciful storyline that has gone on. But it's really good to get that cleared up.
That's exactly right. So there's more to it. I'm not going to give it to you. If I ever write my book, the final, it's probably not going to happen. But if I do, I want the last part to be all mine, because there is another part, and that would be the defining part of why Isiah did not go on that team.
Okay, so there's a lot more behind this, and we will look forward to a potential publishing from you.
But it wasn't
we can kind of get all that. But it's good to know you've cleared it up. There was no tension there was tension, but there was not a situation where Michael tried to influence the decisions or anything like that. Not Charles Barkley, not Magic, not Carmelo. No. There was none of that going on.
No. It's funny because players over time have tried to make it seem like, like Pippen has said it. Yeah. Well, we didn't want Isiah on the team, and hey, Scotty, nobody cared what you thought. Nobody asked you what you thought. No, but you were mentioning the other guys, Magic. Nobody cared. Magic was lucky to be on the team anyway. He was HIV positive. Bird was lucky to be on the team because his back was so bad he really couldn't be in it. So the guys that shouldn't have said anything, Bird never said anything, but Bird ended up firing Isiah as coach of the Pacers as soon as he took over as there are very few people who liked Isiah.
Right. No, but it's really interesting to know because, like you say, that narrative has been out for so long and everything. And whether or not the players liked him or not, those things happen. We are all different people, individuals, personalities, and everything, and they've been competing for so long. Yeah, they probably didn't like him, but I'm sure as competitors trying to get that gold medal, they would have been more than happy to work with him. They probably wouldn't have lunch with him at the dinner table in Barcelona, but they would work together as a team, I would think, to achieve the ultimate goal. So that's really interesting to hear, you clear that up. And yes, for sure, we're going to come back to the book in a little while because this is something that we've spoken about in the last interview that we had. What I'll say to people here, if you want to get some more insights about Peter Vecsey, I did an interview with him on my other platform, the Actors Post, where one of our students who had a collaboration with Leeds Beckett University, and I used some students who did some lovely interviews with so many different people, and Peter was one of them, and Lorna McAllister and Olivia Cummings. I give them a shout out for that that interview. And Peter went into his whole life, how he kind of got into in more detail, how he got into the New York Post, the story behind his family, his family in Liverpool, some awesome stories about Mel Daniels and Dominic Wilkins and everything. So if you want any more insight on that, I'll put the link all over into the description of this video. You could go check that out. But Peter Vecsey, the stories are definitely going to be coming fast and furious from now on. So that is a really good start to this. What I'll do right here, Pete, we're going to come back. We're going to take a little break. and we kind of get back into the next section of the interview, because I have loads more other questions we definitely need to ask, and I want to get full attention and just kind of go from there. So everyone, stay right here. We're going to get back into segment 2 with Peter Vecsey here, Hall of Fame legend, with me on episode 10, Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Orain. Coming right back at you. We'll get back into it. All right, welcome back to segment 2 of Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Orain. We're into episode 10 here with Peter Vecsey, our friend, friend of the show. I would say he's friend of the show. He's just come on for the first time, but I've been speaking to him for quite some time on Twitter, on X, and he's been happy to come on. The first time I tried to get him onto an interview, he said he said on the interview with Lorna that this guy was just pestering me. He kept on messaging me, and eventually I just gave in and came on to do the interview. But I'm really happy. We've kind of built that relationship and to be for you to feel comfortable to come on. And the first segment, we had some really good chats. For those who missed it, we did a little bit about Peter getting into the industry, how it was then, and then we spoke a little bit about the Isiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, tension, we'll call it, and Peter feud. That's the word, and Peter kind of really laid out the narrative that has been there about Michael Jordan not wanting Isiah on the team. There might have been some thoughts about not liking him, but he had nothing to do with Isiah doing on that team. So let's put this to bed right here on Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Orain. So thanks for that insight, Peter, and your insight is definitely welcome here. What I want to do here now is you had sent me in advance of this and preparing for this interview, you had sent an interview that you had done with some guys, I think in San Francisco. Are they based? Was it Larry Kruger, the Larry Kruger show or something? And you had a really great chat about the Warriors and what's going on there, and the history behind what had happened, Steph coming in and everything. And one of the things that I picked up on, which was really surprising to me, and I'll tell you why. You mentioned being a really big fan of Steph Curry, and you also mentioned Caitlin Clark later on in that episode. And it'd be really interesting to find out, considering the era that you covered, it's a totally different style of basketball. You had the guards like Stockton, Isiah, and who else? Gary Payton and all those guys, Bob Cousy and all the other guys, from the 70s, 80s and everything.
From the 50s, you just went to the 50s.
Yeah, what is it about Steph Curry to you, as someone who's, seen decades and, different iterations of what this league has evolved into? What is it about Steph Curry that right now makes him the person that you like to watch?
Well, it's not only right now. I've loved him for a number of years. I mean,
right.
he's at the tail end of his career now, but I saw him at the beginning. Of course, I covered his beginning.
Yep.
And I went out there when Mark Jackson started to coach the team, and that was Curry had already had a year, and not a great year. He had a good year, but not a great year. He finished, I think, second in Rookie of the Year that year. But anyway, what do I love about Curry? Many things. You could start with his shooting, but I'm not going to start there. I think he's one of the greatest leaders that I've ever seen.
Gotcha.
I love the way that he's able to, just be the man, be the guy that they turn to when a team is in trouble, and he, invariable will come through with a great shot or a great pass. His talent is one thing, but the way he handles himself on the court, the way he treats his teammates, the way he treats his opponents.
Right.
He's just to me, the epitome of what you're supposed to be as a professional athlete. And I covered his dad. His dad and I, weren't close. Del Curry. I just saw that the Charlotte team is going to retire his number, and I saw his reaction to it. I mean, he's again. You can see why Steph is like
the way he is.
Yeah, because his father was that way, and continues to be that way. He's still an announcer for the team, and I remember his father asked me to participate in a golf tournament that he was running, and I didn't do it because I don't play golf. But I'm sorry, if I had known his son was going to be this good, I would have attended. But anyway, so that's what I applaud Steph for the most, and he is the greatest shooter I've ever seen. There's nobody can touch him. You know, with not only how far he can shoot from, but the pressure that he's under, that he's still able to come through, you know, I mean, he's a phenomenal guy to watch. You can't have a better role model if you're a kid to follow him. You know, you never see he's not in trouble. God, he's got a happy home life. What the hell?
Well, there's been talk about that, but we're not getting to that.
No, I don't know anything about that. I mean,
Yeah,
got great kids. You know, I don't know. Everything he does to me is positive. Not only in his sport, but then he'll go to a golf tournament and he'll prosper there. And he's phenomenal. I wish I knew him better. I got to know him a little bit when I was out there covering Mark's beginning of Mark's coaching career, but we never got close. And you know, he came so close to becoming a Knick.
Yes.
You know, in that draft,
The
you know,
draft.
they were absolutely. He was the only one they were targeting for that number 8 pick,
Yep.
and the Warriors came in and took him, you know, the pick before, and you know, the rest is history.
That's it. Yeah, you could imagine what it would have been for him being in New York and everything. You know, yeah, he would have been a perfect fit for New York in his style of play, the flashiness. Although, you know, his off-court demeanor is not as flashy as on-court, but you know, the excitement that he brings to the game and everything, it's it's crazy, you know, to watch what he's become. You know, there's this graphic that's out now where he has more three-pointers made than free throws. Well, of course, that's because of his style of play. He's out there. He's not shooting as many free throws because he's not getting to the rim as often. But you know, what he's been able to amass over his career, the 4 championships and everything, you know, what do you think about, well, the fact that you mentioned his leadership is really good because to deal with someone like Draymond Green, you had to be a really good leader. You know, you had to be someone who who's mellow enough but assertive enough to be able to get enough out of Draymond Green at the times that they have. Although we know Draymond Green is a live wire, you can't really stop him. He's a little bit out of control sometimes. But being able, I think playing with Steph probably maximized more out of Draymond maybe than if he had been anywhere else.
You know, all true, but you said a little bit out of control. Is that what you said?
Trying to be nice, trying to be modest.
No, the guy is totally out of control. He's
Fair
been
enough.
that way ever since. You know, Mark and I have discussed the way he acts, his behavior on the
Right.
court. You know, and Mark says there is no way that would have happened if I'd stayed the coach. That just would not have happened. You know, Kerr allowed him way too much leniency, let him go.
Right.
You know, and you're right about Curry, the way he's able to I can't say handle him, and you can't control him, but
Yeah.
to put up with him, and he does get the most out of him by not coming down hard on him. But of course, we don't know what goes
What
on
happens?
behind the scenes. He
Yeah.
might actually really come down on him. Might say some negative things to him.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stop Draymond. But again, Mark said that just would not have happened. It did not happen the one year that he had him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing like that happened. But you know, I don't know what Draymond's one of my least favorite people that I've ever witnessed play in the NBA. I just
Right.
can't. He's a dirty player. You know, he does good things for his team, but he also does bad things for his team. And the fact that this guy is going to make the Hall of Fame someday, it just makes me nauseous.
Right. Well, you know, it's one of these things, and when you know you talk about contributions to a team, and you know they say he's the heart and soul of the team. You know, he's the one who drives the energy, and you know, kind of brings that out. You know, it's weird that you know this team has survived without a conventional or quintessential point guard for quite some time. Of course, Steph plays that is his position on paper, but he's more of an off guard. He's more of a two. But Draymond has kind of done a lot of the ball handling quite a bit, and you know they've had guards here and there to kind of do that. But to be in defense of him, I suppose, in a bit, but of course, accepting, some of his difficult behaviors on the court that many question all the time. He has done quite a bit for that team. And, I suppose if he wasn't there, what would have happened? Would they have won the championships that they had? Would they have some of the toughness? Who knows? But you're right in terms of, he's not the most, palatable individual in terms of how he plays and, some of the dirty plays that have come out and everything. But would you not consider that maybe just part of the game? Some of the emotions and tensions that come, the swings and the ups and downs. Do you see it as that? Because that's what he would probably, when he has his Hall of Fame speech, that's what he'd say. He's just in the moment, in the battle. A punch to Nurkic, a stomp on Sabonis doesn't really cut it as I suppose being in the moment. But that's what he would say. So do you excuse any of that in terms of that? Would we say that the bad boy Pistons with what they did? Is that them doing the same thing? Can you kind of see that representation?
I say Draymond's, I never hated anybody more, but I'll take it back. I think I hated Lambeer even more. and he was exactly the same type of person. He would hurt you. He would hurt you, and he'd hurt you on purpose.
Yep.
I understand hard play. I understand, being an enforcer. As long as you're not going to take it to extremes. And, Draymond is an extremist.
Right.
And he was that way in college. I mean, again, things change over the years. People say different things, at different times. But, I heard his coach hated him. Couldn't wait till he left college.
Wow. Okay.
He was a jerk in college. He's a jerk as a pro. Mm-hmm. And, he's an excellent passer. He's an okay rebounder. Mm-hmm. I love the fact somebody nicknamed him the triple single. Triple single. That's what he is. Does he ever get double figures? I guess scoring sometimes. Let him take the 3-pointer. Okay, go ahead, take as many as you want, Draymond.
Right.
You can't shoot, buddy. After all this time, he hasn't developed an outside shot. What is that?
Well, I suppose when you have Steph and Clay and these guys, maybe why would you need to?
No, get off your podcast and learn how to shoot.
Learn how to shoot.
No, I'm not going to say too many nice things about him.
Fair enough. All right, now, and I mentioned a player there in terms of players that you like to watch, and let's go on to the women's side for a bit. Caitlin Clark, she's come into the league 2-3 years now, and she's just set the WNBA on fire. In terms of attendance, revenue. They're having these CBA discussions because of her, basically. What the attention that she's brought to the game. What do you think? You made it very clear. I think you went over to a game. You had a jersey of hers that you bought. You tried to get her to sign it. You're a massive fan of hers. What do you see her doing for the women's game, and what do you think about her?
Well, the WNBA is flying charter because of her.
Because of her, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they get recognized. I mean, look, I never went to a WNBA game in my life,
right?
Until she came around, and I saw her play in college. She played. I saw her. I guess as a sophomore, maybe a junior. Anyway, when she came into, I live in Saratoga Springs. She came into Albany, which is about a half hour away, to play the NCAA against LSU. And I was lucky enough to glom a ticket for that game.
Right.
And I went there, and I think she had 9 or 10 threes in the game. They killed LSU. I think it was the semifinals. Mm-hmm. And it was like one of the highlights of my life as a fan. I stood up how many times? Might as well just stood up the whole game and cheered for her. And the whole arena was cheering for her. It was just an amazing display. And I was already a huge fan of hers before that. I love she doesn't say anything wrong. She doesn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. Now they'll solve this problem with the money with the WNBA. They're all going to get paid a huge amount of money because of her. They came in she came in. They were very jealous of her. No question about it.
Yeah.
And I will say I totally understand the jealousy because once I started following the WNBA and actually, you mentioned about I went to the All-Star game. I went from New York to Phoenix just to see her play against the Olympic team.
Right.
who they beat,
Yep.
in Phoenix,
Mhm.
on my dime, on my time, and it's not easy to get out to Phoenix from where I live.
Mhm.
And she only had 10 points and she had 10 assists in that game.
Mhm.
She was great. And I brought a Pete Maravich jersey
Yeah.
from his All-Star game, his last All-Star game.
Yep. Yep.
Or maybe it wasn't his last, but it was in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And she broke his all-time record for scoring in college, and
Mhm.
I wanted her to sign it. But again, I'm going out there without credentials. I'm just going out there as a fan.
Yeah.
I couldn't get close to her. I was dying.
Shucks.
So, but this year I've been promised that if I come out to Indiana, I will get to meet her,
Awesome.
and I'll bring my jersey with me. But I told somebody when I left the arena that day when I saw her beat LSU,
Mhm.
I was with a friend of mine, and I said, "This is the first time that I can remember since I was a kid, and I went to a Giants-Dodger game in Brooklyn. I was a
Mhm.
huge Dodger fan.
Okay.
That I've had so much fun as a fan."
Wow. That's something else. And the W brought that to you. Imagine that one player.
He did.
Yeah, that's
He
something.
did.
And the WNBA, of course, has grown, from the 90s when it started. I remember when the league started and Cynthia Cooper and the Comets were doing their thing, winning 3 or 4 straight or whatever it was. The New York Liberty, Teresa Weatherspoon and these girls and everyone doing as much as they can. To think of what the league had was then to where it is now, and they're, Sabrina Ionescu, jumping in on the 3-point competition in the NBA,
That was great. That
you
was
know,
great to go
and that
against
sort of
Curry.
stuff.
She almost beat Curry.
Almost beat Curry, yeah. So
Oh.
the league has grown leaps and bounds, and Caitlin Clark coming in, just continues to do that for them. And there's more coming. We have Paige Beckers, who's in the league now, was the rookie last year, who
Yeah,
played really,
she's
really.
terrific. She is terrific.
Juju Watkins, who unfortunately got injured for USC,
Right.
she's come in,
Can't wait to see her after.
in the league as well. So these girls are gonna set the league to another trajectory. But going back to Steph, I want to go back to a conversation that many people are having, and I think Carmelo Anthony and Shaquille O'Neal touched it a couple of weeks or months ago. They were like, and some people, and I have loads of discussions with my friends about it as well. Can we say legitimately that Steph Curry should be above LeBron James in this GOAT conversation that keeps on going over and over and over? Because he's won against LeBron quite a few times in the finals. He's changed the way the game is played. What do you think about that conversation based on you being a fan of Steph, but objectively as someone looking at the game, maybe putting on your hat as a New York Post writer? What do you think about that dynamic of Steph and LeBron in this era, and who do you give the edge to?
Again, it's all subjective.
Fair enough. Yeah.
My opinion is not worth any more than your opinion or anybody else's opinion. Really, LeBron.
It's a Hall of Fame opinion though.
Nah, not really. I mean, LeBron. Look, I covered LeBron. You know, who would I rather be a teammate of? Absolutely, I'd rather be Curry's teammate.
Yeah.
I think that LeBron is all about LeBron and Curry is all about winning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would take Curry every time, but I'm not saying he's better than LeBron James. I mean, LeBron James is, look at his longevity, the points that he's put up there. Nobody's ever going to get to where he is. I mean, I know we all said that about Wilt, and then we all said that about Kareem.
Yep.
And then LeBron comes along, but I don't see it ever happening. Nobody's going to touch LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
But I watch him to this day. Like I watched a game the other day where they lost to Sacramento,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I tuned in the third quarter. Sacramento's beating them the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many points LeBron had in the first half. I to this day I didn't even look it up.
Mm-hmm.
But in that second half, he was just out there.
Yeah.
He was just out there. He didn't even care. He didn't play defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he took a shot in the fourth quarter. I swear, I don't think he took a shot.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You're just out there to put up points, add points to your 40.
Stat padding, as they say. Mm-hmm.
To me, the ultimate swipe I can take at him is like he's in his Elgin Baylor year of his career. Do you know what that means?
Tell
You know
me,
what I
tell me.
Well, Elgin Baylor, when he decided, I don't know if he decided to retire in
Mhm.
1972 or Bill Sharman, the coach, told him, if you don't retire, I'm benching you. He
Mm,
played about 8 games. I think the team was, I don't know, 4-4 or whatever.
right,
He wasn't doing well. You could see his career was over. So
right.
he retired.
Mhm.
And that's what LeBron should do. LeBron should retire.
Retired. Yeah.
We've seen enough. We saw the great. We saw you at your best. Now we're seeing you at your worst. I don't care if you score 30 points. I don't care. You're
Mhm.
not. You're not. He's turned the team over to Luca, who I can't stand. I don't like watching him play at all because he dominates the ball so
Over
much.
dribbling.
I don't like him at all.
Right.
So yeah, he gets his triple doubles. He scores his points, and so LeBron's turned the Lakers over to him. Oh my
Mhm.
God. Good luck with that. They're not going anywhere.
But that's all Lakers and star searching, wanting the big name and trying to think about, that sort of dynamic, wanting to just be in the glitz and the glamour. But watching Luka play now, okay, he's the leader of the league in points scored right now. He's always been a dynamic offensive player. But then you think about that trade from Dallas and what Nico Harrison did and the rationale behind it. You're starting to see some of that kind of coming through. What do you think about that and how that's all playing out with Luka now?
Well, I totally understood the trade. I mean, they didn't get what they could have. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a joke. It's a joke that what they got.
Yep.
Considering that Luka had taken them to the finals the year
Yeah.
before, it's like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
And that general manager has paid the price. Nico, Nico, what were you on when you made that trade?
That shit.
If you're going to trade him, like shop him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Get a
but
lot more back.
having said that,
Mhm.
I totally understand moving him because
Mm.
to me, look, I know things about guys that played with him that say they hated playing with him.
Right.
Stars that that tell you off the record, couldn't stand playing with him.
Okay.
And Rick Carlisle couldn't stand coaching him.
Okay. Interesting.
That's why he left.
Hmm.
And I guarantee you it'll come out someday that Jason Kidd was in on that trade. He pretended he didn't have anything to do with it, that he didn't like coaching him. He couldn't coach him.
Yeah.
I remember Carlisle called Phil Jackson when he first got Luka
Mhm.
and asked him, how do you coach this guy? How did you coach Kobe?
Mm.
And Phil told him, it's an impossible job.
Hmm.
They're going to do what they're going to do, and you try to put restraints on them, and you try to hold them back certain times. Of course, Phil Jackson's offense held Jordan back and held Kobe back
Hmm.
for 3/4 of a game. That was Jordan's. He would always say, yeah. He wants me to play the offense. What was it? What is it?
Triangle.
The triangle offense.
Hmm.
He says until we're down 20 in the fourth quarter, and he says, okay, now it's your turn.
That
Take over the
unleashes
game.
him. Yeah.
And the Kobe was the same way. But anyway, Luka. And so he told, because Carlisle told me, he says this is when he first got him. He said he wants
Right.
to do everything. He doesn't want to listen to anybody. He just wants to do everything himself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, you can only take so much of that for so long if you're
Yeah.
a coach, and if you're a player, so teammate. So anyway, I think that's what I feel about those guys.
Yeah, but it's interesting because when that press conference came out, yeah, Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd was sitting side by side, and yeah, Jason didn't look, perturbed or disturbed by the trade happening and so on. I think he looked like he was fed up. He played very calm, did the PR PC thing, about the discussion, and everything, acknowledging what Luca had done. But yeah, you could see that there was a little bit of, what, we did this because it was the right move. Probably thinking Anthony Davis would be a little more healthy and it'll be
Well,
better for the team. But you
I
could
don't
see a
know if
little exasperation
I don't
there
know if Davis entered into it. I just think that kid doesn't have the guts to say
to say it.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, he is because he knew he's been around a long time,
Hmm.
and he has undermined a number of coaches in his career and management and all that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
he knew if he said anything,
What that would look like in the media. Yeah.
or yeah, would come back on him. They
Yeah.
would come
Yeah.
after him and not Nico. Who the hell is Nico Aaron? Who is he? What the hell?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. From his time with the
19,
Brooklyn Nets and the Bucks, the power play that it seemed like he was trying to make. Yeah, that wouldn't have gone
absolutely.
down well.
Well, he did it in college to his college coach. He did it everywhere he went.
Right. Right.
He undermined everybody, and not. I'm not a big fan of obviously
Decent.
of Jason Kidd. Yeah,
Who are you? Well, okay, we know who a big fan.
yeah. I
Steph
told
Curry and
you.
Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I'll stick with those two.
Mel Daniels from the Pacers back in the day, Larry Bird. We know who you're a fan of, but yeah, it's really something else, but it's interesting, there's so many different emotions that come out from when you speak about different players and everything. And as you spoke about Carlisle, I think about, when he had Rondo for that year or whatever it is, and how explosive that seemed in the media then. And he kind of just went at it with Rondo, well, on camera a few times, but he couldn't do that with Luca. And it was
No,
really interesting to see what that dynamic was. Why was he able to do that with Rondo and be so much more vocal then, but it didn't really play out like that with Luca. So these sorts of questions come out when you start. I see things sometimes.
yeah. Look, I mean, I just saw a something that Steve Nash did a documentary. I don't know if you saw a mini documentary on Carlisle. Did you
I have
see it?
not seen that. No, not yet.
I,
No. Okay.
I I don't know where it came from. I just happened to catch it on my phone.
Okay. I
It
must check that out.
it was really good. It went right back to his college days, and
Okay.
interviews with. I mean, it was amazing.
Right.
And Rick and I go back. Became really good friends when he played with the Celtics.
Yes.
So it got into how he made the team. How they traded Gerald Henderson, who
Right.
had just been a big time factor in them winning the championship the year before. They
Mm-hmm.
wind up trading him
Mm-hmm.
before the season to Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how Rick Carlisle makes the Celtics
Wow.
in 85, 86. Yeah, the
Mhm.
championship. So he and I got to be friends that year. I spent a lot of time with the Celtics that year,
Right.
and we after Celtics practices, not all of them, some of them, I would stick around and play Rick one-on-one. We play full court. We play full court one-on-one.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
and then when he joined the Knicks, and he wasn't getting great playing time,
Mm.
he would come down to the Y where I played, and he'd play in the afternoons from 12 to 2 with us.
Right.
So we became, really good friends over the years. Now, he's not the guy that told me about his problem with Luca. I got that from somebody else.
Right. Right.
But when he started, look, he started with the Nets, with Bill Fitch. I mean, Nash. I don't know how Nash. He does TV stuff now. He does these little documentaries. I don't know how it happened. He did
Yeah.
a great job. I mean, really, he
Awesome.
told me stuff in that documentary I didn't know.
Okay. I'm gonna look
And
for that.
it was only, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes,
Oh,
20,
okay. Like a
20 minutes.
short film sort of thing. Right.
It was really, really good.
Cool. I'm gonna look for that. Yeah. So that's thanks for the tip on that. So that's really good. How tall are you, Pete? You're talking about playing. I
6'1".
know you play with the guys in the rucker and everything.
Yeah, and I played. I could play. I
I
got
know.
better and better. Got better and better as I got older.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was good, but I wasn't.
NBA ready.
No. I was never that. But I started at one point and I failed off the team. I never got back into that position. I was fifth and sixth man in college, on the Hofstra for that one semester. But in the army, I got really good. We won our I was in the Green Berets and for
Mm-hmm.
2 years, and
Yes.
So down at Fort Bragg, we had our team, the Green Beret team, and we beat the 82nd Airborne for the championship.
Mhm.
And I was really good. I was the MVP of the team, and
Oh,
we had
nice.
a lieutenant who was my backcourt mate, or I was his backcourt mate,
Mhm.
who played at Kentucky,
Right, right,
and he got Kentucky to come to look at me in the championship game. And
right.
I had a really good game,
Scout
and
that.
they they said, when you come out of college, when you come out, you come to Kentucky. And I said, no. I said, I got a good job waiting for me at the Daily News. I said,
Right.
I've been there, already been there 3 years. I said, no, I'm going
Is
back
that
to
is
work.
that you realizing for yourself, or just being very self-aware that you didn't think your skill could go further?
Right. Absolutely. No,
Right, right,
I was good, but I knew I wasn't a pro or anything. And play
right.
at Kentucky? No, man, I couldn't. I couldn't even see that happening.
Wow.
But I was so appreciative that my lieutenants had them come and scout me.
Yeah,
I
that's awesome.
held the people who saw me play in many later years would not believe this, but I held the best guy on the 82nd Airborne team to 0 points in the first half,
Ooh,
and I had 20 that game. So
ooh, nice.
and we beat him. So anyway, that
Mhm.
I still have the write up. I still have it. You
Of
know?
course, that's bragging rights. You had to hold on to
Yo,
that.
man.
Yeah,
No, because
yeah.
I don't think I ever got a write up in basketball as a player, except then.
Right,
And then
right.
and then I got better and better playing in the Rucker. I played against Earl Manigault, guarded him for a half.
Hmm.
Played with Julius. Played in the Cutcher's game, the charity game up
Charity
in
games, yeah.
where I played with Maravich in the same backcourt and Oscar in
Mhm.
the same. I played with those guys. I mean, it was
Wow.
like, yeah, unbelievable.
You pull out some awesome pictures sometimes and you post them on Twitter. Like you just go into your archives and you just put them
Yeah,
up on Twitter. And I've
right.
seen some of these pictures of you with Dr. J and and Oscar and all of that. And it's awesome to see, some of the
Yeah,
things that you've done, interactions you've had, and actually playing. A lot of people, I think they kind of go at the media quite a lot and say, oh, they didn't play. They don't know what it is. Okay, you didn't make the NBA, but you were a player. You know what it is to be on a
right,
know what the chemistry requires is required to be a champion. So
right.
it's really good to know that players, people like had skin in the game literally to be able to talk about it and get garner the respect that you did as
Well,
well.
one thing I loved to do was I challenged players to games
Is it
when I was covering the league. So
really?
I played Larry Bird one-on-one, in front of the Celtic team.
How did that go?
He beat me 11-5, and
Okay,
to this day I said it was 11-6, but he says 5.
okay. You
And
got
then
5 points up. That's all right.
no, yeah, absolutely, in front of the team
Yeah.
after Celtic practice. I played Isiah Thomas in his gym at his house,
Wow.
and the first game we're playing until 21,
Hmm.
and I've got him down, and
Hmm.
I'm letting him shoot from outside because I know the only way I can win is if he let him shoot from outside. He makes them,
Yeah.
and so he changes the music. I got him like 7-2 or something. He changes the music and then I've got him down like 11 something. He changes the music again, and then and then he did it.
Distractions.
Yeah, and then he did it a third time, and he beat me 21-16.
Oh
And
wow.
I played him 3 games of pretty competitive. Now look, I know how great Isiah Thomas is. I mean, if
Yeah,
he
we all
takes me
do.
to the hoop, he'd shut me out every time.
Hmm.
But I did beat some pros. I beat Butch Beard, who started on the '75 championship Warriors. I beat him.
Right, right.
I beat a few guys, and
Right.
I beat Mark Jackson in 3-point shooting.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, Mark was
bef-
not a 3-point shooter anyway, so yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, but I still have to make them.
Yeah.
That was Christmas Day. He's playing for the Clippers, and it was it was before the game. Before the game, I'm working for NBC. I've
Hmm.
got my suit on. I take off my jacket. I'm in my
Nice.
regular shoes.
Nice.
And I bet him $50 that I could
Hmm.
beat him.
Right.
and I beat them in front of the team.
In
And
warm-up.
they were going wild. They were going fucking wild. And then I told them I really rubbed it in. I said, no, keep the 50.
That's it. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. You leave the mark like that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome news, man. I think that probably just helps with players probably loving you that the way they did. I know people like I think I remember listening to your story where you said you had a conversation with Latrell Sprewell after everything about the PJ Carlesimo stuff, and he was trying to BS you a little bit. He was trying to hold some information back or maybe twist it,
Yeah,
and
twisted.
you looked at him and you told him, no, listen, we know the story. I know the story, so come straight.
Right.
And I think people respect that about you. You were straight talking, you got to the point, and the players kind of had to choose, talk to you because they know they know your stuff, or stay away. And I think
Right.
that
Right.
helps with the aura that you had as a Hall of Fame writer and everything that you did.
That Sprewell story, that's a good story because that happened in the union office.
Yeah.
After he was suspended and the union was going to fight Stern on that.
Mhm.
So he came into New York and I went there for NBC and for the Post
Right.
to interview him, and the executive director Billy, I can't think of his last name. He was the head of the union. He told me I can't talk to Sprewell. No, you can't. And Sprewell came out of Billy's office, and said, no, let him in. And that's when what happened. What you just told.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, exactly. So me and him in that office alone.
Mm-hmm.
And he wound up admitting everything. And there was no question what went on, and that I had the goods. Mm-hmm. And we became friends after that. I tell everybody, like I endorsed him for the Knicks to get him. If the Knicks don't get Sprewell, they don't get into the '99 finals.
Not at all.
No, yeah. I mean, so it was him and what's the center's name?
Camby.
Those two guys. Both guys. Van Gundy did not want.
Yeah. Okay.
No. He got in. Well, Camby was traded for Oakley.
Right.
And so Van Gundy did not want to trade Oakley. Mm-hmm. And so he got into it with Grunfeld, and because of that, Grunfeld wound up getting fired almost before the end of the season.
Wow.
And they, the Checketts, the president of the team, said, he had told me at the time, he said, my boss has told me one of them has to go, either Van Gundy or Grunfeld.
Wow.
He chose Grunfeld to fire, and told me that he was going to fire Van Gundy as soon as the season was over.
Wow.
And then they go on a winning streak in the last couple weeks. They get in, they win they get by Miami, they get into the finals against San Antonio.
That's an AC.
And the rest is history. Then he has to re-sign Van Gundy.
Yep.
But he did not want to do that. He wanted to fire him as soon as the season was over.
Yeah, that was a magical season, and of course the Knicks are trying to do this again. They're trying to get back into people's consciousness as winners now with Jalen Brunson and everyone else. But what we're gonna do, Pete, we're gonna break here for the final time to do our last little bit. We have a couple more questions, but yeah, that conversation about the Knicks and everything was really interesting there. So we're gonna do one final break here. We're gonna get back into segment 3. Of course, everyone stay here with us. Peter is sharing some awesome stories. You want to stay here to hear the last bits of this. I have a couple of more questions. So Baseline to Baseline with Alister and Maureen, one more time, episode 10, segment 3 coming right up. All right, welcome back on to segment 3 here with Peter Vecsey. We're having just continuing a really lovely chat. It's been really nice to kind of go through some of these stories that we've had. The first 2 segments have been lovely. If you haven't listened to those, please go back, rewind, go listen to what Peter has had to say about, multiple different things. Awesome stories, it's just gems, these gems from someone who has been there, who has seen it all, and kind of relating it back to this current day as well. So Pete, what I want to do here in this segment, thinking about where we are. We 2025. The league has merged from the ABA. We've seen Dr. J come in. You broke that story. We've seen Larry Bird. We've seen Magic Johnson. We've seen Michael Jordan. We've seen all the players who have come in. We came into a time where David Stern, when he became the commissioner of the league, he did a lot, to try to clean up, the image of the league, from, the Coke days, as people called it, instituted the dress code with Allen Iverson. He's done his own things, during that time. Adam Silver has come in, of course. David Stern, rest in peace, passed away. I really respected him as a commissioner. He meant what he said and he did what he had to do. But Adam Silver has come in, and of course he's taken, this players approach, trying to appease the players and trying to be a little more for them, I would say. I think most people would probably say that. And he's instituted some changes into the league where we have the in-season tournament, we have the play-in tournament, we have, all of these different changes of formats to the All-Star game. From your interactions with David Stern, maybe from your time, whilst you were officially in post doing what you did, any interactions that you could probably lean on that could maybe give some insight as to what you think David Stern would think about what the league is now? Because I think a lot of people would say that for the competition purposes, especially the in-season tournaments and the playing tournament, to try to get teams from not wanting to tank, the rationale for why Adam did it makes sense. And I think it has kind of helped. But what do you think David Stern would, sitting back, maybe looking back at this league right now, what do you think he would think about where the league is now?
Well, David would laugh to know that. Well, no, he would laugh at your question that you're asking me to try to figure out what he would be thinking.
Well, fair enough. But just being from that time, you know what I mean?
Yeah, David and I, we had our bouts, over the years. But I always respected him, and I think the biggest thing that I would wonder about is how the gambling would have happened if David Stern were still commissioner. He was absolutely against it.
Yes.
He wouldn't even allow games to be held in Vegas unless the games were being taken off the board, that you couldn't gamble, you couldn't bet on them.
Right.
Now, I understand how much money is involved in the gambling. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's absolutely, it's sickening. It's sickening that there's so much gambling involved. I mean, look, we're seeing it in college just the other day.
Yes.
How 20 to 30 players are involved in fixing or shaving points, gambling. It's like it's preposterous that it's not, and I don't see it's ever going to go back to having no gambling because there's so much money involved.
They've opened the door. Yeah, there's no way to kind of reel it back now.
No, I don't know. So I don't know if it would ever gotten there. He was so against it, and Adam was against it too. Right. I remember being introduced to Adam Silver when he was first hired. We were at a league meeting out in California, and he had just hired him. David introduced me to him and stuff. And Adam and I became really good friends. We're good friends to this day.
Right. And
he always tries to involve me in everything that goes on with the league. Not everything, but like the All-Star game. I'm constantly invited to the All-Star game, and the one in LA I'm invited to, but I don't know if I'll make it. It's getting more difficult for me to travel, especially from where I live. Mm-hmm. But I think I can still be objective about decisions that he's made, and I think the gambling one. And again, is it Adam Silver who is making these decisions? No,
probably not.
The owners.
Yeah,
the owners are making the decision. They're the ones that are prospering, and the players are. Look at the contracts that these guys are getting as a result of the extra money that's coming in from gambling and from TV. Mm-hmm. It's. It blows my mind every time I see a salary of a guy that, to me, is like a fringe all-star player, and he's making $30-40 million a year.
Absolutely.
No, it's like, yeah, but it's no
Jordan,
more preposterous.
that last year of Jordan, him asking or getting that $33 million contract, how crazy that was then. That is nothing now. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the last 2 years, 33 million each.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that, Michael couldn't and didn't try to renegotiate his contract. He was
Mhm.
making, like Pippen was always trying to renegotiate his. Dominique Wilkins was always trying to and succeeding in redoing his contracts. And those days are over. You can't do that anymore. But why do you have to? The money that these guys are, but it's as bad as Stephen A. Smith making the money he's making. It's laughable.
Oh man.
Fine. They're gonna pay him. It's beyond me. But David,
It's one of those things where I suppose the phrase "don't hate the player, hate the game" comes in, I suppose.
yeah. I mean, look, all the players, the players who were, a guy like Oscar. What does Oscar think of these? He to me. I remember him being asked about making $100,000. Don't you think you're making too much money? Or maybe was that Oscar or was that Wilt? I mean, one of those guys.
Wow.
They're making $100,000. Like,
Mhm.
oh, don't you think that's too much money? Oh no, actually, I
Full
think
game
that's
now.
I'm being underpaid. But
Crazy.
I
Yeah.
don't know, David. I think David, just looking at the way the players who aren't dressed for the game, the way they're attired during the game, I think he'd be turning over in his grave just to see
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
or the way the coaches are dressed.
I
Like,
was just
you
about to
think
say,
David?
I was really surprised after COVID, they didn't go back to coaches actually having suits and stuff. They remained with the track suits. I was really surprised with
Oh my God! It's
yeah.
I gotta tell you, I'm glad I'm not covering anymore. You know,
But
I,
but
I,
what
I
but objectively though, what do you think about those tournaments and everything that he's instituted? Do you think it has actually helped the game, or do you think it's kind of cheapened it?
well, I think that the in-season tournament gets a lot of exposure, and
Hmm.
there was a lot of excitement. It seemed to me, I wasn't at the games. I don't know how many people were at those games. They can fool you and make you think that there were a lot of people there, and they're not.
Yeah.
But I thought the games were, really hotly contested, which is amazing to me because they're meaningless.
Hmm.
Just another victory, on your record that year, except for the final game.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They got some excitement. They got teams to play harder now, players to play harder because there's so much money, more money. Like, okay, how do we get them to play harder? So it's not enough that they're making 40 million. Now we're going to give them another couple
$500,000.
$100,000
Yeah.
to win. Well, wait a minute now. There was
Yeah.
something else I was going to say about David. David wondering about. I lost my train of thought, but I know there's a lot going on. Oh, I know, tanking.
Yes.
So David was. I remember when the Lakers it was a game I think at the toward the end of the season, and they were going to play Seattle. And I'm pretty sure it's the Lakers, but it really doesn't matter who it was. But maybe it was San Antonio,
Hmm.
and probably was. And so they're going to play a game in Seattle, and and Popovich decides to sit three or four of his best players,
Hmm. Hmm.
and David Stern went nuts. I mean,
Yeah,
he fined them, a lot of money for that time.
he did.
That you can't show up in an arena and your best players aren't there. And what about all the season ticket holders? That
Yep.
this is one of the few times they get to see him. They already bought tickets ahead of time, so he jumped on that.
Hmm.
But since then, no matter what the league has done, these players that wind up sitting out games, the star players wind up sitting out games. They say they have an injury, or or they can't play two games in a row. I
Hmm.
remember Bird telling me one time. He said he laughed. He laughed at the players complaining about. This is when he was coaching. He says, "I laugh about the players complaining about playing three games in a row." He said, two games in a row, back to back. He said, we used to play 3 games back to back to back.
3 and
He
5.
said, I loved it. I loved it because in the third game, they were tired and I was still slow. So it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Yeah. It's something else because these players, and it kind of seems, and well, they say a lot of the time it's not their decision, it's the medical teams and ownerships making those decisions because they're assets, right? They're looked at as another row on the ledger, and you have to protect that asset, and the players say that. But a lot of the times you think to yourself, if you're that star player in that team making that $200-300 million contract, you have a say. You want to be there. Jordan made it very clear he wanted to be there for the fans. He wanted to make sure that guy in the top row, would remember him because he bought that ticket to come and see him play. So it's really
let
difficult.
me stop you. So let me stop you on Jordan. So if you recall, the year that he hurt himself, that he was out for half the season or how many games he missed, and then he came back to the Bulls, and they were monitoring his minutes. Stan Albeck was the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And they were monitoring his minutes, I mean, to the minute. And he was arguing with owner, who's still the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, and with Jerry Krause, arguing with them that he should be allowed to play. Well, what's the difference? You only want me to play maybe whatever it was, 20-something minutes, or then it was increased to more than 5. He said, but you'll allow me to practice?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make any sense?
True, exactly.
Now, Stan Albeck wound up playing him. He was fighting for a playoff spot.
Yes.
And he wound up playing him a few more minutes than he should have. And he got into it with Jerry Krause. And he was fired at the end of that year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it all had to do with the minute distribution to Michael Jordan.
Right. Yeah, it's something else, and these players now, I just don't get it. We're supposed to have better technology, better medicine, better shoes, all sorts of stuff, and I just don't get it. And yes, the game has changed. There's the more wear and tear because of all of the running around. I had a medical expert on that was on one of the episodes, and he said, there's the specialization of the sport earlier on, where these guys, back in the day, guys played multiple sports, so they built their bodies differently. Whereas now, guys are specializing in one set of movement with the sport they're specializing in really early, that it builds more wear and tear in the body, and that kind of contributes to that as well, which all scientifically makes sense. But
it's a theory.
In theory. But when you think about it still, and you see all these guys just kind of missing games the way they do, like Paul him, I don't want to really use him as an example, but like Anthony Davis, all what he goes through, and these all seem very legit, and he has a very unique body that probably needs to be studied, differently, because he's constantly injured. But you see some guys making these decisions. Kawhi Leonard, plays really good, and then the next day he's just out for months, sort of thing. And of course, we don't want to shame anything that's legitimate, but to the fans, it really hurts. So I just wanted to get your insight on what you thought David Sid would think about how things have changed, but to try to influence and try to give these guys more motivation to play, and having to change formats of stuff. I just don't understand it. I've never liked it from the time all of these things happened. But
to me, it's an indictment on the players that they have to, exactly. That they need to be induced with more money to play harder at a certain time during the season. It's really very condemning to who they are. Yeah,
absolutely laughable. People played for the love of the game and to try to show their skill and to prove to be the best. And now you need all these incentives. I don't get it. And someone will look at me and say, well, you're not an NBA player, you don't know what it is. But at the same time, just thinking about the fans, it just doesn't really reflect good on the players as much as it should, in that sort of way. The next question I want to ask you as we kind of wrap up is, we had this little incident that happened with the Clippers recently, which I still don't understand. Chris Paul getting released by the Clippers. When that happened, what did you think about that situation? I thought that was just so disrespectful, what Lawrence Frank did. I came on one of the episodes and I said, what about him? I feel like as much as there was this talk about the aspiration deal, that tried to circumvent the cap to get Kawhi in. I've been saying, Lawrence Frank has frauded Steve Ballmer just as much as aspiration. I don't think he's done enough to kind of warrant, too much praise or being put up on some sort of pedestal, and to kind of make that decision about Chris Paul. Now I know Chris Paul is a Marmite, Marmite as a term from the UK. Yeah, I either love him or hate him, in terms of being a teammate. But how they released him and everything, how did you take that, and what do you see those sorts of things happening back in your time, and how do just how things are handled now, just transaction wise?
Well, look, let's deal with Chris Paul. I mean, you touched on it. He is a very, very difficult teammate, and
Right.
he is the leader. I mean, this has been going on since I remember when he first came in the league. He was already a dictator, on the court, off the court. Just the way he would talk to his teammates and stuff. I mean, all of them admit, that they had a very difficult time playing alongside him. And the reason he was dropped by Houston, I mean, he was the same kind of thing. He comes, he goes. I was surprised they signed him to begin with, because they're all veterans there, with the Clippers, but he's tough to take. Do you really believe it was Lawrence Frank's decision?
Well, not him.
No,
that was more Ty Lue, wasn't it?
Not a chance. Not a chance. So Lou, I'm sure Lou had everything to do with that.
Yeah.
And the players were probably sick and tired of him, and so they made a mistake in signing him, and it's going to be a mistake if we keep him longer. Van Gundy's assistant on that team. I bet he had something to say with it too. He's probably, he's always in players' ears.
Yep.
Paul was probably in his ear too.
Well, there was this whole thing. There was this whole conversation about the word leeway, where Jeff Van Gundy told him, you might have had leeway before in other teams to kind of make decisions and make adjustments. Don't mess with my defensive plays and tell Kawhi.
Is that true?
That's what has been reported. That
so I didn't even know that, but I'm just saying I can project that would happen.
So I think in a game against Cleveland where Kawhi Leonard coming off of injury, it looked like he was a bit, a step behind in terms of getting over screens and everything. And Chris Paul went back to the bench when he came into a timeout, and he was like, well, Kawhi's, still kind of recovering. He's not there yet. He's not warm yet. Why don't we switch up and put someone else on? Who was it? I think it was Donovan Mitchell or whoever it was they were playing. And Jeff Van Gundy was like, hey, you don't switch up my plays. You had the leeway before. Don't do that here, sort of thing. And that kind of seemed to have what precipitated everything that happened.
So I was right on the money.
You were right on the money on that.
And I didn't even know that story.
So that's kind of what happened there. But Pete, this has been awesome. Really good to have a chat with you. I know we could go into I have so many other questions that I had, but I'm just being really mindful of your time. And like you said, you have some really bad weather over there. You had to kind of do some snow shoveling, which isn't great. So I don't want to kind of keep you too long and everything. The last question I'd ask you, the last two things, very, very quickly. When we last spoke in 2019, you said you were writing your book. You're about 7 or 8 chapters in. How far are you now? Can we get any further along to know a publishing date is coming? I really want that book, Pete.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be flat out honest with you. I don't think it's going to happen. The reason is that I've gotten divorced since then.
Okay.
And part of my divorce is that I have to share everything that I make 50-50 with
I get you. I see where you're going.
And I am not going to do a book.
I see where you're going.
50%. So if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And then you got to pay Uncle Sam, and then you got to pay your agent. And no, well, am I going to work for nothing? So I'm giving you a lot of my stuff here.
Right.
And I do it on a few podcasts. I let a lot of stuff out. So that's the reason it's not happening.
That makes sense. That makes sense now. I get it.
Yeah, big time sense.
A lot of sense, yes. And the last thing I'll do, just a little fun bit. Of course, like I said to you when you see I reached out in terms of this podcast. This is, of course, NBA conversations, NBA trending topics, everything that happens, throughout the time. But this, of course, is we're trying to do it from trying to give a Caribbean voice to it, a Caribbean flavor, because we are from the Caribbean. Oreen, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it today, he's from Jamaica. I'm from Saint Lucia. So what I want to find out from you is, have you done any Caribbean travels, any islands that you like? What is it like? Any places that you enjoyed being, if you have been? And can I make a suggestion to you to different places that you could probably go if you wanted to just go put your feet in the sand and have a drink at some.
So my favorite place is Montego Bay.
Montego Bay.
Okay. My first wife and I had our honeymoon there.
Oh, cool.
And I'll never forget that. That was just phenomenal time that we had there. And then my sister went back there, years later, met a man in Montego Bay and married him.
Okay.
And that didn't work out, but they had a kid. And so I would love to go back to Jamaica.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Oreen would love to hear that.
Oh man, yeah. Ocho Rios. I wanted to go to Ocho Rios.
Right.
Kingston. I would. Yeah. So and I'm a big. Anyway, I still have great memories. So unfortunately, my second wife burned the album that had, or she cut up the pages of all the photos that I had from Jamaica from my first marriage.
Right. So all of those memories lost, but those memories will live in your head. But yeah, it's just a fun little thing. Like, the Caribbean is really a destination. Saint Lucia specifically, where I'm from, it seems like quite a lot of players are going down there now. Draymond Green has been, Andre Drummond. I think Michael Jordan was there a couple of months ago, or sometime early last year, which was really cool to see his private jet flying into the island. That was really cool. So the Caribbean is a place we will always want to promote, and this is one of the reasons why we kind of podcast out in this sort of way. So Pete, this has been lovely, man. Thank you very much for spending some time with me here.
Yeah, good to catch up with you.
I'm going to keep in touch with you as we normally do on Twitter as the season goes on. Oh, last thing, any predictions for the season? What have you seen so far? I know you don't really follow it as much, but anything interesting that you've seen from the season that you like?
I'm really surprised that Oklahoma City is actually losing games. I watched Miami beat them last night. It was like, what the heck?
What's going on? Yeah,
all of a sudden they went from they're gonna break the record.
The record, NBA.
Yeah, we're not talking about that anymore. But I love watching.
Wemby has Chet's number.
No, I don't know about it. Well, Wemby's unbelievable. I mean, really, I tell people he could go to the Olympics as a basketball player or a gymnast. I mean, this guy, I love watching him play. Love watching him talk. Oklahoma City. I love listening to those guys being interviewed. It's to talk about a real leader. Oklahoma City's got a great MVP leader.
Right.
A lot like Curry, perfect guy. So no, I mean, I'm surprised that the league has opened up a little bit. We really have maybe, 4 or 5, 6 teams. If Joker is able to come back healthy, and Denver has done real unbelievably well without him. They did a great job of. Getting a different bench, different role players to help him during the off season.
Yeah.
So I was shocked when he got hurt. Everyone was saying, with this Joker, it never gets hurt. Then he got hurt.
And then he got hurt. Yeah.
Like the next day.
Never happens until it does.
Oh my God. I love watching him play. He's another guy I'd pay to watch him play.
Oh, absolutely. Same here. So yes, we're gonna sign off on that. So again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Saint Lucia. I will still put out Saint Lucia as a potential destination if you
All right, I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up.
I'll put in some words for you if you want that, because you know it is my country. But thank you very much, Pete. You know, your insight was amazing. The stories, of course, always really good. I'm going to continue following you on Twitter, and everyone should as well. Pisa is a good follow on X, on Twitter. You know, definitely do that at Peter Vecsey 1, I think your handle is. And you know, just look out for whatever he says. All the interviews that you do always kind of gives great nuggets of insight as to your time, you know, being a reporter and everything there. And this is another opportunity for you to do that through us. And like you said, if the book doesn't come out, these conversations will get everything out for you.
There you go.
That's what it is. So Pete,
thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. We shall catch up again soon.
Later.
From the hardwood floor to the spotlight glow, breaking down the stats every fan should know. Trace, place, legends in the making. Every headline, no mistaking. Fast breaks, crossovers, highlight reels. What's real strategy, what's hype and feels. East to west, we call it straight. From draft night buzz to finals fade. Baseline to baseline, we cover it all. Big plays, bold takes the rise and the fall. Baseline to baseline, where passion is prime. Your NBA